And we're back for another episode of Michigan Wolverines Live, episode number 89. And we're excited to welcome everybody in. As always, as you trickle in, you're coming in, you're inviting friends, we hope. You're telling your neighbors, your cousins, your whatever, that Michigan Wolverines Live is happening. Please go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to Michigan Football at Voice of College Football. And if everybody shares with a friend and everybody posts, then we could double, triple the folks that are in here. My name's John Diadamo, and as usual, I will be hosting tonight. You can find me on Twitter at John Diadamo. And of course, the man who makes all of this happen, the voice of college football, Mark Rogers, is in the house tonight. Hey, Mark.
John, how are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling like, this number one recruiting class thing, we keep hearing about it, and I thought it would already be down to number 2 or 3, and it isn't. So this is, we'll keep the positive vibes going.
Yeah. So is that going to be a topic of debate? Are we going to go that direction in regards to whether it's going to end up a number one recruiting class?
We'll find out.
Okay.
We'll find out. But kind of beginning first topic, this came up for those of you who watch the Iowa football, the Voice College Football show with the great Corey Bratta and Mark. What was discussed in chat and also just kind of talked about in the last couple of days was the quarterback rankings that have come out by Wolverines Wire and other channels for the quarterback rankings in the Big Ten, which seems like J.J. McCarthy, and I checked a few different ones, is listed as number 1, and Cade McNamara around number 5 is what we're seeing, which is interesting given that they both played for Michigan, and now Cade is off running going under center for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So what did you make? First off, what did you make of, that situation and like where these two are? I mean, compared to, I think Talia was number 2. Ohio State's still in that quarterback battle, so we're not quite sure who that's going to be yet. So do you think it kind of makes sense in terms of at least those couple that I just rattled off?
So who are we referencing with a top 10 list or a Big Ten quarterback list?
Yeah, so I was on Wolverines Wire.
Oh, Wolverines Wire. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they've got JJ at number 1.
Yep.
Cade
Talia
at 5.
Talia at 2. And yeah, Cade is 5. Yep.
And who's at 3 and who's at 4?
So I will tell you that. So at 3, we've got Drew Aller. And 4 is Kyle McCord.
Okay. So, So there's two ways, in a sense, two basic ways, general ways to slice this. And I can go either way on the approach. One would be you don't rate anyone you haven't seen. You don't rate anyone, or you put them at the bottom of the list.
Yeah.
Regardless of the hype, regardless of any kind of projection. And that would be Kyle McCord. That would be Drew Aller. Sure. They've thrown passes, but they've not thrown meaningful passes in meaningful games against good opponents. So that's one approach. The other approach is you project, you give it your best shot based on what you know of their scouting report as a recruit, what you expect them to do. There's a couple other things to consider here. So you also consider, I think most of these outlets that rank any position, but especially quarterback, they are projecting statistics. They are telling you who they think are going to have the best statistics. I don't do it like that myself. And when I get to it, I will churn out my quarterback rankings. I just lay out who I believe are the best quarterbacks, 1 through whatever in the conference or in the country.
Yeah.
Meaning that I don't try to, I don't try to project based on the offensive line and the weapons that they have, how good they're going to be, how good they're going to look statistically.
Mm-hmm.
So think of, to put this in a context, if you truly believe JJ McCarthy is the best quarterback in the Big Ten, but you threw him on Rutgers, then a lot of people would no longer rate him as the best quarterback in the Big Ten. I would, because I'd say he's still the best. He's still the same player, but he doesn't have the opportunity to put up the numbers that he would otherwise.
Well, what's interesting is I think that this ranking that our buddy Isaiah helped put together, I think it's kind of a mix of stats if they played, and then with the case of Kyle McCord at 4, he basically straight up says this is based on Ohio State's offensive firepower, that he's that high right away. And I would say that's fair. Once assuming he starts, and we don't even know if he's going to start yet. Apparently, Devin Brown is still in the conversation for sure, and it's going to go into the fall, given the fact that he didn't really set. I think he had like 50%, 55% completion in the spring game. So like, it could be that the next rankings in a couple of months we'll see the other guy in there, and maybe that's just the generic Ohio State quarterback slot until they play games. Maybe that's just it's going to be top 4 no matter which one.
Yeah, and I understand that. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand it. It's a reasonable approach. I don't know when the last time the Ohio State quarterback was not the best quarterback in the Big Ten. I guess we'd have to go year to year and go backwards. So I wouldn't be surprised if the quarterback at Ohio State's the best quarterback in the Big Ten when it's all said and done. Now, for right now, I'm going to say it's JJ McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say, again, I'm not going to rank them off the top of my head because I give it a little bit more thought than that. But I'm okay with their rankings. I'm not going to blow them to smithereens, but I think they're reasonable.
Yeah, and Talia, I mean, I've said it's been very consistent. Like Talia, number 2, I understand that one as well, based on what he's done, his body of work, and that one was also based on statistics, and they referenced the 2022 productivity, and then it kind of goes into the unknown a little bit, right? Because after number 2, then you start hitting the Drew Allers of the world, who don't have a ton of game film, the Kyle McCords of the world, and Cade McNamara, even though he has a body of work on tape, he only played he started 1 game last year, his audition in the first game of the season. So then you start to get into the variables and the unknowns once you get past the first 2, where they're kind of doing more projecting as far as what could potentially happen. But with this kind of situation where you've got 2 Michigan quarterbacks in the top 5, my brain immediately goes to, are we going to get the game that we were kind of robbed of about a year and a half, 2 years ago? Because I think a lot of us were really excited for the possibility of the spring game with Cade on one side, JJ McCarthy on the other. Unfortunately, JJ had that injury and was taken out for the spring. But the way I'm seeing the Big Ten West shake out and the Big Ten East, Ohio State's of course going to be the biggest threat in my opinion. People are beating on the Penn State drum, but I think it's more prove it first. Whereas Michigan and Ohio State both have proved that they are an 11-win, 12-win programs, right? So it's probably going to be one of them. So the scenario in the West, though, Wisconsin looks shaky. We saw the first, I would call it the infant version of the air raid, right? Because they're getting the pieces together. That's going to take time, right? So Wisconsin may take a little while to get right. The defense will be great under Fickell, but I'm just thinking like who the big threat to Iowa will be in the Big Ten West. If not Wisconsin, right? Nebraska's still figuring it out. They're looking tough, but what do you think of, what do you make of the Big Ten West and kind of the the challenges to Iowa in that scenario?
I think that Iowa is the most stable, sure commodity in that division. Like, I would be greatly surprised if they weren't a good team that was playing for the conference or the division championship on the final weekend of the season. I do think that Wisconsin has more upside, and I think that Nebraska has upside that there's a possibility that they could challenge for the division. But man, you talk about prove it to me first. That a team hasn't proven anything for years and years and years.
Right.
So I unless Brett Bielema is an even better coach than I believe he is, I think Illinois is going to take a step back. They lost just way too much all over the place on that team.
Maybe 6-7 wins, maybe.
Yeah. I do like Minnesota as a program. I don't necessarily know that this is the year for them. So when you add it all together, as long as Cade McNamara gets ample time, decent offensive line play, they picked up Caleb Brown from Ohio State. He's done nothing, but from a talent perspective, he's the most talented wide receiver that they've had in years and years and years.
Oh, Iowa's having a parade right now. They don't care that he hasn't done anything. It's an Ohio State wide receiver, and they see the stars and they see the all of the talent.
So at this early stage of the game, and with Iowa's receiving a favorable schedule, no Michigan, no Ohio State, Penn State early, maybe Drew Aller's not quite sharpened his game at that point, and they don't even need to win that game. Certainly at Penn State, that would be a huge bonus to win that game. The key games are going to be against Minnesota, against Wisconsin, against Nebraska, and within the division. But I think that this game is certainly in play as a possibility, and I think especially Michigan fans would relish the opportunity to see, for those that would be rooting for Cade McNamara, out of all honesty and sincerity, to say, I wish him well. That would be great to see him in Indianapolis. And then others that I've heard a few Michigan fans out there that aren't necessarily wishing him the best, but in the moment would want him to show up at the Big Ten championship game just so he could get his brains beaten in by 40 points, I guess.
Well, I said to the Iowa people in chat yesterday, and of course we encourage everybody to watch Iowa Hawkeyes live every Tuesday night at 5:30 Eastern. But certainly in chat, I was saying, I'm going to be personally, Iowa to me is like almost a secondary team where if they're playing, then you might be. Rooting is a strong word, but more on the side of them, because at the end of the day, you've got Cade McNamara, you've got Eric All. We wish that, as far as many Michigan fans, I think wish them well, despite maybe some of the remarks made on the way out by them as well as family members, and Jordan Palmer, and all of that stuff aside, they still gave their heart and soul for the Michigan program. So I think many, so Jason has a good way of looking at it. I wish Cade and Eric the best. That's why I said root is a strong statement, but at least, if they're on, okay, maybe it's a little bit of go Iowa, a little bit if they're playing a team. Same with Henning. I'll be watching Oklahoma a little closer with Andrell Anthony, because I think he's going to be on the starting wide receiver lineup and could potentially do very well. So absolutely. So with that said, JJ versus Cade, we'll see at the beginning of December in Indy. We'll see what happens. But we have, of course, we want to thank our wonderful sponsor of the Voice of College Football. So I believe, Mark, you have a little video to share. Possibly.
We will get there.
In the meantime, we'll put the link so that everybody can get their free trial.
Most of us are on the internet pretty much all the time. It's fun. You get to socialize, you get entertained, and in this day and age, it's pretty much necessary. And even if you're one of those people that's not on the internet all the time, you know what is? Your personal information. And there are people out there trying to hack you all the time. They want your email address, they want your phone number, they want your place of employment, and they want to do bad things with it. There's also fairly legitimate corporations and companies that want your information. They want it for marketing purposes. They're going to buy it, they're going to sell it, they're going to trade it. At the very least, it's annoying to you. It's a nuisance, it's aggravating. Your email gets cluttered up with spam email. You get robocalls all the time. That's at the very least. At the worst, it's a threat to your family, to your friends, to your personal information, to your banking, to your finances, to your security, to your safety, to your identity. It can be pretty serious. This video is sponsored by Aura. I got hacked and it was pretty obvious. This was about 8 or 9 months ago, and there were red flags all over the place. And I didn't exactly know what to do, but I knew I needed to do something quickly. I mean quickly. I researched 8, 10, or 12 companies immediately. I went all over the place. I asked people. I was online looking for the best company that could serve my needs and secure my information. You know who I found? Aura. And I'm glad I did. It was amazing. I contacted them. They got right back to me immediately. Their customer support is phenomenal. Their customer service is first-rate, friendly. They are detailed. They know what they're doing, and they do it right, and they will protect you. In addition to everything I just mentioned, they've got a password-keeping service. They keep your credit score. They notify you anytime there's a possible data breach. This has happened to me a number of times. I'm getting notifications all the time when there's a possible compromise to my credit score or anything that I don't want. They've got a VPN that will allow you to browse the internet anonymously. It's amazing. And again, customer service support available 24/7. Click the link in the description section below and get 2 free weeks of Aura. Protect your finances, protect your information, protect your privacy, protect your identity. I did, and I'm glad I did. Aura, thank you so much for what you've done for me, and now for my Voice of College Football community.
Woo!
What was cool about that was that Aura approached us for a sponsorship about a month ago, not knowing that I had already used the product and was already a member. So, you know, 2 different portions of the company, obviously. The one reaching out for a sponsorship, not knowing that I was utilizing their product already. So it was tried and true and tested. So it feels good to be able to promote something and forge a partnership with a company that I already use and can certainly endorse. So we've got the link in the chat. So check it out.
Check it out. Helps the channel. So go for that. And Jason, who is always very generous, and we thank him for always contributing and getting that hardball head up on the screen a couple of times a show. Thank you for the compliment there, Mark and John. 2 goats. I think that's a goat emoji. In college football, that's a big statement. There's a lot of folks. So Mark, yes, I don't know. We'll then it doesn't get any better than this. And then okay, so a lot of emojis going on there. But thank you, Jason. That is extremely nice of you, and we thank you for always being part of the show. Before we get to our topic, though, so a damn beast actually asks a really interesting question. That especially interesting given the fact that he is a Georgia fan, saying that Michigan has an argument to be the preseason #1 based on returning production, key players, less churn. And I'm thinking, are you taking a page out of the Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, like coach speak playbook there, trying to reverse psychology everything? Because in my view, Georgia, unless you just want to completely ignore the last 2 national titles, in my view, Georgia has established themselves as the number one, and then you have an argument underneath that. That's my opinion on it.
Well, much like the quarterback rankings, I think that this can be approached a number of ways. Some people will tell you that the defending national champion should start the next season number one regardless. I understand that approach. I understand that thought. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get it. It's logical. But if you're going to go down that path, then why would the number two team not be number two and number three? You'd have to just take the final rankings from the previous season and just, regardless of who's lost what, who's gained what, just start the season. Fortunately, we're in a playoff era where it doesn't matter anywhere close to what it mattered and the weight that it held 20 years ago. It just doesn't, because these teams are going to be evaluated based on what they've done on the field. You're not going to have a situation where 2004, 2003, get the years mixed up, 2004, USC, Oklahoma, Auburn all finished undefeated. Well, USC and Oklahoma were supposed to have that type of season. Auburn was not. They started barely in the top 25, so they hit a ceiling, because back then you're not going to lose your spot in line if you staked your claim to a top spot, and just as long as you didn't lose, regardless of how bad or mediocre you might have looked on a given week, you weren't going to generally lose your spot. So again, it's the rankings are, I'm not doing much for my business in particular by telling you that they're insignificant, but it is a good argument point. And I think Dan Beast Media makes a good claim here, because Georgia did lose its quarterback.
Sure.
Georgia did lose a lot more than Michigan did.
Sure.
Of course, they did the year before as well. So Georgia, Michigan, I think those are the two teams that have the most secure position, where I feel the most confident in what they are bringing back. And I think that they have the highest floors of anyone. Even Alabama and Ohio State, I think, have more question marks than either one of those two teams.
Yeah, and it's definitely conversation that will keep happening. I think that you also have to look at who they are. So Carson Beck not only did he look good in the spring game, but he did put up, granted, he was the backup, but he did complete 26 out of 35 passes. He had 310 yards, 4 touchdowns. He does have stuff on tape. So whereas a lot of these quarterbacks, they're starting, they don't have any game film or they don't have any stats. At the very least, Carson Beck, he has put up some numbers in 2022. He looked, in my opinion, in the spring game, I was worried as a Michigan fan who thinks that there's a good chance we might be playing Georgia in a playoff game. It looks like the quarterback play is at least as good, if not better. Again, it's a spring game, but you're facing the Georgia defense in the spring game too. Got to remember that, right? That's probably the best defense they're going to face is each other for at least a decent stretch of that season. So, yeah, could go either way. Join our Discord, join our Patreon, talk Wolverines all the time. We are on there. We go to patreon.com/MarkRogersTV. And recently we did a poll and people voted on what they wanted to talk about for the Great Debates Month. And 97 Michigan, 97 Nebraska seemed to be at the top for that. So every so often we put some polls out there, ask, what you'd like to see with the channel. Hey, would you like to get on a hangout or play some trivia? Or, we have a friend of the show, Tide Guy, that invites people to Jeopardy and trivia. I mean, there's all kinds of things that go on even during the off season. And then we'll get the betting guide going for the season. And I'm sure we'll have more watch parties and game film and everything else as we get into August, September. So it helps the channel. It's $5. Come on over. Patreon.com/MarkRogersTV, or join our YouTube memberships, which start at $2.99. Either way, do one of them. Helps the channel. It'd be great.
I'm going to let out a little secret, John, that maybe I shouldn't, because
Uh-oh.
May is Great Debate Month at the Voice of College Football. So we've already had 3 great debates involving Pac-12 versus Big 12 and the realignment discussions and all the chaos and drama that's going on there. Then we had a retort by the Pac-12 or by the Big 12 a couple nights later. So that was a debate as well. Then we had Rick Anaya lead a conversation looking at the 60s and 70s and the 10 greatest programs in college football from various standpoints. Yes, May is Great Debate Month at the Voice of College Football. John brought up a couple other ones that we're putting together. But if you have a great debate, we won't let it end in May. We'll keep going and just add more and more great debates as the great debates keep coming. We will leave it open to all of you. If you serve up a legitimate great debate, we will do our best to bring in people that obviously have knowledge of and are passionate about that conversation. Some of them that involve video. Some of these games, like the Michigan-Ohio State game of 2016, of course, the controversial play, and other plays in that game. So the focus is on the spotting of the J.T. Barrett run against the Wolverines. But there are other plays in that game so that require video. So to avoid copyright issues, we're going to take those to Patreon and make that in a situation in which we want to watch the game. We want to be able to move around in the game and show the controversial plays and discuss and talk and freeze frame them and do all those fun things. So yes, it's a great time to join the Discord to talk college football all the time, but also with a Patreon, you get in on some of those discussions. Now we're going to deliver most of those here to everyone as we have the first 3. But again, those ones that involve video and are going to be much more fun and lively discussions with the video involved, we will have those again on Patreon. And John, not to toot my own horn, but it did come up the other night since we were talking about win totals, and we may even hit on that tonight if we have time. And I was looking at, I was just curious because I had completely forgotten, because I'm not a big win totals guy, and that's like not my specialty or anything.
Yeah.
But actually, Steve Dace was the one that kind of reeled me in on picking win totals, because he would present those to me when I would appear on Michigan podcast. And I was like, okay, well,
yeah,
I don't
gotta hold it. Gotta hold it for the Michigan podcast, Mark.
Yeah, I don't do this, but okay, I'm going to have to respond to his win totals. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll do it myself. So the last couple of years, I produced videos with my own win total suggestions, let's say, or recommendations. Well, I looked at last year and I produced a video where the first 5 selections I made, I hit on 3 of the 5. So, okay, you're ahead of the game, but nothing too crazy, 3 out of 5. But then right at the end of the video, I said, look at Georgia, look at Michigan, look at Ohio State at 10.5. Take them all over, take all of them, because you can be pretty rest assured that 2 out of the 3 are going to hit it almost for sure. And then, of course, what happened? Michigan and Georgia went 12-0, Ohio State 11-1. They all went over. So I hit on 6 out of 8. So that's just another thing that you'll get there on Patreon, of course, would be the predictions as well.
$5. I mean, come on.
You know what's crazy, John, and people have missed it at this point, but it'll be coming back around this fall, would be our buddy Steve Merrill at Wager Talk hit on 13 out of 14 against the spread.
Yep.
Now he's not going to do that again, but he's really good.
I gotta watch his a little closer.
That's crazy.
When looking at that thing that you put together with all the media people, and it's what, like 7. I mean, there's times it's 12, 13, 15 different media people that are on there giving their takes and giving their predictions for the week. So definitely check that out. And we thank everybody in chat, because I've noticed the last couple of weeks, the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry and the recent history of the last couple of games has been rehashed now on this show, on the Buckeye show, but also on the USC show and on all the shows. It's just the spirited debate that continues. Ohio State, Michigan, every Voice of College Football, there's at least a little bit of it. Gotta love it. All right.
Yes, I see it all over the place. Yes, it doesn't stop.
How about we move to a little bit of recruiting news? So, if you were catching Big Ten live, I mentioned this briefly, but didn't have a lot of time to go in depth. That Channing Goodwin of Providence Day, Jaden Davis's teammate, has committed to Michigan. 3 or 4-star wide receiver, depending on what you're looking at, and he committed on Sunday. And the stats were pretty solid, right? 968 receiving yards, 15 touchdowns. I think maybe his overall ranking as 72 wide receiver. Maybe I would have put it a little higher than that, just based on what I've seen on actual film.
I do expect it to go up.
Yeah, we hope, right? And so this is great news, obviously, because as of now, the 2024 class, although it was number 1, did we see a lot of wide receiver talent? No, right? We saw defense, we saw O-line, which made sense. Joe Moore Award twice in a row. I get that, but you also have to have people to throw to, and so Channing Goodwin provides someone to throw to. For Jaden Davis or JJ or whoever is under center in 2024, and that's pretty solid. And I have here the 247 as well that I'll show here. But Providence Day, there was some talk about maybe going to North Carolina, but yeah, in my view, he's pretty solid, right? He had some offers from other places, 17 offers around the country, right? And I know that North Carolina was one that was discussed as a potential other. Same with Jaden Davis, and the reason is because it's so close to Providence Day. Barely have to take a car ride to get from home to the school, right? So that one made some sense, but some solid offers. Nothing where I'm like, oh, wow, this is next level, but certainly some respectable schools in there. And given the stats that we saw, I think he could be positioned for a solid career at Michigan, especially if Jaden Davis is in there and they start to focus a little bit more on the passing game, even starting this year. Maybe. And we have a merch store. Don't forget that. Shop Voice of College Football merch. Get yourself some merch, topqualityshirts.com/collections Mark Rogers. And we have all kinds of products on there. I went through a whole diatribe on Monday, so I won't go crazy today. But basically, there's stuff for everybody. And you can get yourself some Mark Rogers Voice of College Football merchandise. Our friend Joey Foster puts that together, does a fantastic job. So get some merch for everybody. And I know that a lot of people in the chat here have actually gotten something. I know that Mike always talks about the hoodie, and Cheryl said she got a coffee mug the other day, and so we're hearing some testimonials of people getting some merch.
Nice. Cheryl got a mug, huh? I didn't hear that.
Apparently, as the word on the street.
All right.
Yeah. So, and then looks like, okay, so Stan, yeah, we're pushing. So Ship is the one who is the other Providence Day wide receiver that could be a potential to commit in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, if that. So yeah, we're pushing. I mean, listen, Michigan is pushing for a lot of people. Pushing and interest are a little different, right? So Jeremiah Beasley is one that comes to mind. Jeremiah Beasley from Belleville is linebacker who for quite some time was targeted to Michigan State. But in recent weeks, there's been rumblings. Given what's been happening with the program and some of the moves, I don't know if it's related, but some of the moves that have been happening with the Michigan State program lately. This is a 4-star across the board, including the composite ranking, linebacker, 210 pounds. And as you can see, while Michigan State is still in the lead, it's getting close. And the most recent, obviously, was today, Michigan Insider. But I think the most notable one was the Michigan State Insider targeting Michigan. That to me was the story, right? Because okay, Michigan publication saying he's going to Michigan, that's one thing. But when you get the other school that he was supposed to be rumored to go to, and they're saying Michigan, okay, now we might have something. What do you make of that, Mark? Just in terms of the shift there.
Well, I think it legitimizes that crystal ball projection for one thing. I'm looking at Jordan Shipp's numbers, and just a note to get back to him. He caught 62 passes last year for over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns. So a big game producer after a nice season as a sophomore as well, with 45 catches, 8 touchdowns. So
yeah,
sometimes you will see players that are ranked around the place where we're seeing Channing Goodwin, Jordan Shipp, that are talented athletes, but they haven't produced yet for whatever reason, haven't been huge game producers on the field, but their measurements are phenomenal, their size, their speed, all those things. But these are two guys that have gone out there and done it. So that's obviously a good thing there.
Yeah, Shipp and we've been talking about Channing Goodwin, but you mentioned the stat line there. What Shipp was able to do, they're more yards than Channing Goodwin. One less touchdown, more yards, right? So Shipp is right there, and we broke down some game film when Jaden Davis made the decision. We spent a good hour, and we even had Jordan Bowman on that. And we were breaking down, Jason was on that for a bit. We were breaking down the film of Jaden Davis throwing to these two. And they were catching passes that it wasn't just here's what was notable, because you can explain a lot of it away by it being high school defenses. But when you have defenders and you have a tight window, and Jaden Davis can still get the ball off to these two, that I think is something that will translate to college. What do you think there? Because I know it's hard sometimes to evaluate high school film, and you got to kind of put it all into context.
Yeah. So the putting into context is understanding the competition and how good is that competition, but then just raw athletic skills that regardless of, because these scouts are having to go to remote places. And when I say remote, I don't mean the middle of nowhere, but I mean from a talent standpoint, remote, meaning they're not hotbeds for high school football, and they have to evaluate players that are not playing anybody close to their ability. So they have to just be able to evaluate, depending on the position, and what's valuable to that position, the arm strength, whatever it is, for the quarterback, arm strength, arm skill. And I consider those two different things. So there's guys that can just chuck a ball 75 yards, but they don't necessarily have arm talent,
right?
In that in terms of the trajectory on the throws, the accuracy, being able to throw from different arm angles, all of those things require arm talent, that require strength as well, but not just for throwing deep passes.
Yep.
So absolutely.
Yep. So I think you can glean some things if you watch the huddle tape, and you
Sure.
can watch Jaden Davis's huddle tape. You can look at the. I'm sure that Channing Goodwin and Shipp have their own, but you can see a lot of it in Jaden Davis's in terms of what he's able to do, not just with wide open receivers, but when he's in tight windows. That to me that to me speaks more. That will translate. The other, I mean, wide open doesn't. It's going to happen a little less in college. And let's be real. In the past, who's the school that we think of as having the most wide open receivers? Alabama, Ohio State, right? But with this talent coming in, that could change a little bit. So let's keep an eye on that. We also have heard that yesterday, four-star linebacker Aaron Childs has announced his top 3 schools: Michigan, Maryland, and Florida. And it does seem like that one is trending Michigan as well. Although you can kind of understand why you might consider a Maryland if you want the playing time, right? Because we're seeing quite a few linebackers being rumored to Michigan here, and so there's an argument that you could make that if you go to a Maryland and even a Florida to an extent, although they have that quite a bit of talent that they can mine, you might be a starter a little quicker. You might see more time on the field if that's important to you. But from what I've seen, it does seem like Michigan is in the running here. In fact, 100%, unlike the one we talked about before, he has 100% of the crystal balls going to Michigan. So right here, all 4 predictions are Michigan. So even though Maryland and Florida are in the top, does seem like it's headed Michigan's way. But just check out some of number 6 in the country, number 10 in the country linebacker. It's pretty solid.
Yeah, the composite has him at number 6 and the 75th rated player of the country overall.
Mm-hmm.
And 247 Sports has him at 120 nationally, which is still extremely high, but it always begs the question, and I'll do a little dive here to see. That means the other services have him considerably higher than 75. For him to come out at 75 with 247 weighing him down at 120, then he must be in the 50 range with the other services.
Yeah, and if you look at in Maryland, he is the number 1. So in the state of Maryland, he is the number 1 linebacker in both composite and 247 Sports proper. Another reason why Maryland has made the top 3, right? Just like North Carolina made the top in Jaden Davis's rank in his top 5, and Channing Goodwin and Chip, and they North Carolina. There's always a school, I feel like, that where the proximity is really close, and then you have the school that they're actually going to go to, and then you maybe have a few others in there. But yeah, it's this guy clearly. All reports are showing that he is he's a force, and Michigan has 100% of the crystal balls. So we should be seeing that. If he's announced as top 3, then we should be getting a commitment in the very near future.
Rivals and ESPN have him at 57 and 63.
There you go. That's exactly what you just said. Yep. Yeah, Stan is based on what we just saw, not just looking at this, but just looking at the talent evaluations of him. It seems like a borderline 5-star isn't a crazy statement. If he's number 1 in Maryland and number 6 linebacker to number 10 linebacker in the country, then yeah, I'd say that's not a huge reach. Right. Exactly. Here's one to toss out that I thought was interesting, and I read this in a few different places. And Isaiah Hole talked about it. 247 Sports talked about it. That 5-star offensive tackle Brandon Baker. Now, this one, when we talk about a stretch, okay, now we're getting into a bit of a stretch because this guy is being offered by everybody. This guy is being offered by Georgia. He's being offered by Ohio State, right? But there's a little bit of buzz towards Michigan. which I think that speaks to how the offensive line has been performing the last few years at Michigan. The two Joe Moore awards, it's becoming almost like an OLU, so to speak. And so I'm not like super shocked that a 5-star would at least consider Michigan alongside Georgia and Ohio State when it comes to an O-line position.
Modern day high school, obviously, they are one of the very best in all of high school football, year to year for generations. He is the consensus number one offensive tackle in the country. And if he would go to Michigan, boy, that would be an enormous. If he goes to anywhere outside the state, but especially considering that Ohio State and Michigan are going to be competing with USC head to head starting in 2024 for his entire career in school, for them to be able to get either one of them to be able to get the number one player in the state, the number one offensive tackle in the country, a top 20 or 25 player in the nation out of Southern California. Wow.
Yeah, and what's interesting is although USC and Oregon are on the list and Washington, so they're all on the list. There's also schools where he's going to have to do a little bit of traveling, right? Georgia, Ohio State, Miami, and Michigan. There's travel involved in all of them, and I think it's interesting that these are the schools that he's looking at, because it's a tale of very different approaches to the programs at each one. They're all programs that have historically been kind of at the very, very highly regarded in terms of branding, at least, even if like in a Miami situation, they've had their down years. But, the schools, I'm not shocked that there's warm interest in any of these 6, right? None of that is shocking. But what is shocking is that again, you have your Miami in there, you've got your Ohio State in there, Georgia and Michigan. It's just, it just speaks to the fact that I think he's heavily evaluating schools that would involve travel and schools that he could potentially have an impact in right away, and Michigan being on that list. Alrighty, well, with that said, we're at that point in the show where we're going to talk about the must-see TV block. So, of course, we know. Oh, real quick before we get to that, Amazon. Don't forget when you're doing your shopping. I just got a popcorn maker using Mark's Amazon link just a week or two ago because I was tired of the microwave popcorn. I wanted good popcorn, and I hit the Amazon link. It just takes 2 seconds, because otherwise it's the same as any other time you use Amazon. But that way, Mark gets a couple of bucks. Okay?
Thank you.
Why not? Like, let's try to, these types of things, the like button, if you're going to do it anyway, the like button's free. And Amazon, if you're going to do shopping on Amazon anyway, you might as well hit the link and help Mark out, right? So check that out.
Amen to that.
Check that out. So we have our must-see TV block tonight of Voice of College Football. Coming up next is the Florida State Seminoles live at 6 p.m. Eastern. And then I believe we have a few more shows after that, right, Mark?
We do. We've got Miami coming up at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We've tacked on an Oregon live show tonight. We're bringing in an Oregon contingent of folks.
Wow.
Spencer McLaughlin and Ryan Winter are jumping on board with us. So we will enjoy the Oregon football talk at 8:15, 8:30 range as soon as we can turn around from the Miami show. So be there. And although the block gets broken, we will extend it for you Michigan fans, because on Thursday at 8 Eastern, right here, we will be here with Tony Altimore to take a deep dive on Michigan football, academics, athletics, and the football program that is extremely insightful, of course, with Tony here breaking down the metrics on Michigan football. So we've done the USC deep dive. We did that on Sunday night. We're going to all the various channels to take the deep dive and it's Michigan Thursday night.
There it is. The Thursday deep dive at 8 p.m. Eastern with Tony Altimore. So that's your second part of your double dose of Michigan this week. We're really helping out. Mark, I know your mission in life's to help out the Michigan Wolverines, and and here you go. But Tony, I'm sure will be doing this for a lot of the schools as well. So he always comes with great insights. Like I always say, I always learn something when I watch anything that Tony does and the graphics that he puts together. And there's always something I take away from that at any time he's on the screen. So check that out, folks, Thursday at 8 p.m. But we will see you over on Florida State Live. I'll be joining in the chat, and I hope I did post the link straight to the video. So all you have to do is click that link. You literally go straight into Florida State Live. Just hang out for like 10 minutes, and then the show will be going, and you can enjoy some more Voice of College Football.
Awesome.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Mark,
you,
for being part
John.
of this.
Appreciate it.
All right. Until next time, go Blue.